our approach is indeed like filter out those products that are high in sugar by basically blocking the sweet taste of it. Like you're literally not interested anymore because you don't get that dopamine hit that I just explained with on your tongue, basically where it starts.
Welcome back to the Health Longevity Secrets Show, where we push the limits of human potential and unlock the secrets to our health and longevity with your host, Dr. Robert Lovekin.
Sugar isn't just a craving, it's an addiction hardwired into our biology. But what if you could turn it off? My guest today, Sander Brus, is tackling metabolic dysfunction at its root by literally blocking the sweet taste receptor, rewiring how our brains and bodies respond to sugar. From dopamine hits to gut sensors, this is a deep dive into the future of metabolic freedom.
And now, please enjoy this week's episode.
Hey Sander, welcome to the program.
Great to be here, Rob. Thank you.
Well, I'm super excited today about the things we're going to be talking about, and maybe just start off tell us a little bit about how you came to be in this space. So what was the moment you realized that the metabolic health crisis wasn't just a statistic, it was a personal mission?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm from the Netherlands. I'm from Amsterdam. I studied at the university here, and I have a medical background in medical natural sciences. So I was always interested in everything that had to do with biology and medicine. Right after my master degree, that's when the pandemic started, and I got the opportunity to found my first business, which is called Diagnostics and has to do with point of care testing for back in the days, COVID testing was, of course, very important. But later on, I started reading a lot about metabolic health, about the foundation of overall health, and all of these things that are now mostly popular in the US. I would say it's still not so popular here in Europe. It's coming, but you can see most of the books behind me are authors from the US and some of the people you know. And sorry, your book is not out there, Rob. I gave it to a friend who is a doctor. Liza taught in medical school. But I started to realize that we are, maybe not focusing at the right thing when it comes to chronic conditions, right? It's really explained well in the book of Peter Attia, Outlive. Like most of the people, 90% of the people who die of chronic conditions like neurodegenerative disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and type 2 diabetes, like mainly those four horsemen. And what's really like in between and is metabolic health. So it should make a lot of sense to focus on things like blood sugar, insulin resistance and stuff. And also when it comes, to come back to OCOS and infectious disease, um, what we saw during the pandemic is that the people that got hit the hardest, with COVID were metabolically unhealthy. So they had or type 2 diabetes or they were obese. So it's really the focus on metabolic health gives me a lot of energy since it also is about lifestyle and about the things that we do in our everyday life. And it's not like, a genetic lottery that you have from your birth on. It's something that we can control, and that should give a lot of power to people, right?
Yeah, so you're right now you're 31 years of age. So let's see,
I just
you
turned 32. Yeah.
32. All right.
Yeah.
So let's see, you probably got another 90 to 100 years to go. And so what do you see in healthcare today that most people your age completely miss about metabolic health?
Yeah. So first, to me, it's not really about the number, but of course, like living, like the health span that you can live and enjoy your life in relatively good health. Like, for me, the goal is to serve a long time, to still be able to stand on that surfboard when I'm 70 years old. That's for me a personal goal. But I think what you see, and it's funny, when I first saw your social media post, I saw something like you had two different play like cues basically, one for lifestyle and one for pills and, and medication. And the latter was full and the other one was empty. And I think that really describes how our healthcare system is set up. You know, there's a little money to be made also from healthy people. So we should do it ourselves. And I think receiving, that lifestyle now and diet gets more attention is only a good thing. And you start to see doctors here also, that talk a lot about, certain diets, movement, things that you can do, and are somehow critical about things in the system that just do not make sense, right?
Yeah, for a lot of ways of thinking about it, the real pandemic isn't a virus; it's sugar, right?
Yeah.
Why do
Yeah,
you
no,
believe
yeah.
that sugar? Why do you believe that sugar is the number one threat to human health today?
Yeah, then I would say everyone should listen to Robert Lustig, endocrinologist, someone you've interviewed also. And what was really, touching to me is when he explained that he saw patients coming in that were literally 5 to 6 years old, so children, and they had adult diseases like fatty liver disease, which used to be something only for people with alcohol problem, right? They would get fatty liver disease, and it's an adult disease. But now children were coming in, and he explained that he had conversations with their parents and were was asking the question like, what does your children, are you drinking or? And it's clearly linked to soda, and so you really have like a causal correlation with soda consumption and some of these metabolic conditions. And sugar really is the bad guy here. And that's also why with NOSU, we are focusing on mainly sugar. It's really the common denominator in ultra processed foods, for example. Like it's the reason that we get the dopamine hit from food, that it's hyper palatable, and that we consume more. And we can touch, more deeply into the biology there, how it works with leptin resistance and stuff. But it's just fascinating. And I think the best thing you can do for your, extending your health span, living a long and healthy life would be to lower your sugar consumption, maybe cut it out completely, and to lower your overall blood sugar levels and thereby also your insulin levels. Because as he also explained, insulin is the real bad guy, but we can do a lot of great stuff now with wearables and with a CGM, for example, a continuous glucose monitor, where we can get a good overview of how our blood sugar is, how it's going, fluctuating and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. The whole field of continuous glucose monitors is moving lightning speed. I just interviewed someone with a wristwatch CGM that doesn't have needles or anything, and it's hopefully be coming out in 2026. And I'm currently wearing this is a glucose monitor ring that just came out that'll be released November 15th, and we're going to be talking with some companies on that. So it's really moving fast.
So
So there's
non-invasive, yeah.
a lot of attention to glucose, and why do you think so many people think they're healthy while they're living on a roller coaster of these glucose spikes, which we feel are
Yeah,
unhealthy, right? To spike the
yeah.
glucose super high all the time, right?
Yeah, and not to talk bad about people because I was just like everyone else before I started realizing like how bad it is and how easy it actually is if you're completely off it to maintain that behavior. But I was on the glucose roller coaster also the whole day, and I think the point is it's really comfortable to stay there because just with alcoholism, the best fix for it is to drink more or to have that other dopamine hit or like glucose spike because then you feel better. But I think like back in the days, our ancestors were metabolically flexible, right? They could tap into fat burning and use ketones for fuel, and they can use glucose. But like you mentioned, like now every day, almost everyone is continuously on a glucose roller coaster with all of the side effects. So it's really about the most difficult thing is to get off in a short period. But then if you're there and if you have like, for example, a diet with whole foods or like keto or low carb, to me personally, like it's not that difficult to maintain because it gives you also a lot of pleasure. It's just different, and it is in a practical way more difficult to do like groceries because, as you know, 74% of the products in the grocery store are like, I wouldn't say poison. I know some people refer to it that way, but they are ultra processed, so they contain a lot of sugar, vegetable oils, etc., to make you really crave it. But if you switch to whole foods, it's not that difficult to maintain.
Yeah, yeah. Just to underscore your great point you made about our ancestors, the sugar consumption by our ancestors historically, even recently, is it was much less. And one can imagine, our hunter-gatherers 12,000 years ago, for most human population, sugar wasn't that common, except maybe in the fall when the fruit came out with fructose, or when they might find some honey or something. But it was just, it was uncommon and not a large part of their diet. But that of course is no longer true
No.
today. And we're eating more sugar by order of magnitude than we did even recently. So,
Yeah.
and thinking about sort of the things about a healthy diet, you touched on them, and we talked about them before in our podcast. And sugar is really unique in that. I mean, some of the other things like say seed oils, right, vegetable oils, the case for those isn't as strong as sugar, but still, it's pretty. There's a lot of evidence with inflammation and driving
Yeah.
oxidation and all with those things, but with seed oils, it's not like we crave them or we even taste them. And many times, most people can't necessarily even tell when they're substituted for butter or olive oil or a healthy oil and they're replaced. It's more driven by cost and economics. Seed oils are cheap. They're subsidized by most governments. Certainly, our government subsidizes junk food and seed oils. So it's cheaper to put seed oils in than it is,
Yeah.
healthier oils or fats. But so I might save money, but it's not like I notice any difference in the taste. And
Yeah.
similarly, people are critical of grains, especially US grains that are adulterated with weed killers like glyphosate, and have things. But even
Yeah.
that, it's we're not driven to it like we are with sugar. Literally, we crave sugar,
Yeah.
and many
Yeah.
people. I think the evidence is very strong. We're addicted to sugar. There are
Yeah.
programs for sugar and junk food addiction where they actually use drugs like low dose naltrexone
Yeah.
which is an anti-addiction medicine, which also works for sugar addiction. So anyway, just setting the stage here,
Yeah.
sugar, like you say, it drives our dopamine centers. We crave it, and let's dive into that a little bit now about what is it about sugar? How do we sense sweetness? Maybe tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that because you're an expert in that area.
Yeah, so there's a really interesting Huberman Lab podcast about this subject for 3 hours. So if your audience is into it, they could listen to it. But it's actually with sugar, it's twofold. So you have the conscious effect that if you would take something sweet, which is indeed, like you said, our ancestors only had fruit or honey, which was seasonal. So of course, when it was there, they reached out and got as much as they would can, and it would basically, the first thing is, so it touches your sweet taste receptor on your tongue, and you would taste obviously something sweet, which is linked to sugar, of course, and glucose, fructose, all of those things are sweet. And then you would get that dopamine hit, like it would give you pleasure. It activates the reward system. So that's the conscious effect, and that you like it, and that, the food industry puts it in a lot of products. Then you have the unconscious effect, which is the neuropod cells in your gut and the sweet taste receptor again, the same receptor you have on your tongue, but it's also present in your GI tract. And this is all recent research, but it's really fascinating. And it's the reason that, for example, in chips, you have hidden sugar. It's something that you cannot taste with the conscious effect on your tongue, but still these neuropod cells and sweet taste receptors in your GI tract would recognize it because they function as a glucose sensor. And via the vagus nerve, again, you can listen to the detailed version with Huberman. it activates the dopamine system again. So you would have that dopamine hit again, although you didn't taste it and you don't have the conscious effect. So there are parallel pathways in place that we indeed, as human beings, crave sugar, sweet things. And, yeah, like I said, there are now, it's everywhere. It's 24/7 available. There are like 270 names for sugar, maple syrup, fructose, like a lot of different things, and it's better for overall health, I would say, to limit your sugar consumption or maybe skip it because as you look in macronutrients, you don't need carbohydrates to survive. You need fat, you need protein, but carbohydrates and sugar is not something that is essential. It's optional. But I think a lot of people nowadays live under the assumption that you need sugar, you need it for the energy. That's not true.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of evidence that a low carbohydrate diet, even going as far as being in ketosis, which low carbohydrate diets, if they're restricted enough, will produce, has metabolic benefits that scale across all the chronic diseases that account for 80% of healthcare dollars today, all the way,
Yep.
we've talked about them many times on the program, from starting
Yeah.
with obesity, hypertension, diabetes, cancer, heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, even mental illness, just to name a few. And these things all seem at some level to benefit by carbohydrate restriction, a low carbohydrate diet, or ketosis, or the effects of ketosis benefit from them. And the first step to on this path is lowering the carbohydrate consumption, and sugar is one of the big drivers for that. So you're basically you're now taking aim at the literally the sweetness taste receptors, not
Yeah.
sugar itself. So you're not trying to change all the foods that we eat, which is maybe an
Yeah.
impossible task, but you're rather
Oh man. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
rather targeting the taste receptors, right? That
Yeah.
detect sweetness. So maybe tell us a little bit about how those work.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed, it's twofold. But so I was recently in the US, as you know, and the problem is so much worse, I have to admit there. Like I've walked into the grocery stores and it's just like literally, you would have the same products like Oreos or Kellogg's that we have in Europe, and they have different ingredients in it. Like we have banned some of the ingredients that are linked to things like ADHD in children and artificial dyes, that whole story. And it's just crazy. So it's also very hard, for me, and I think a lot of experts agree that you cannot blame the individual that is living, for example, in the US and has to worry about paying the bills, taking care of the family, that we got to this problem of obesity where indeed, 74 of the people, percent of the people are overweight or obese, and over half of the people have prediabetes or diabetes. And yeah, it's easy to blame the individual. That's something I wanted to mention, but I think it's indeed like a systemic change from also where the food industry needs to play a role. Like our approach is indeed like filter out those products that are high in sugar by basically blocking the sweet taste of it. Like you're literally not interested anymore because you don't get that dopamine hit that I just explained with on your tongue, basically where it starts. So we also want to have like a behavioral change on the long term that you will switch to more whole foods, not high in things like high fructose corn syrup, things that are extremely sweet and are linked to metabolic dysfunction, right? And the other thing is indeed like if you would block the sweet taste receptors in your GI tract, you would lower your glucose spikes and insulin response if you do take sugar. So it's twofold, like making sugar a boring option, that's one. And second, like have metabolic improvements if you still take sugar, like mitigate the harmful effects. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so twofold. The first one is kind of a mental effect. In other words, if I see a bowl of M&Ms there, and I take one M&M. It's really sweet. Well, what's
Yeah,
my next impulse? To grab a handful and shove it down my throat, right?
yeah, yeah,
I guess we've just lost M&M as a sponsor of the program now. But anyway,
yeah,
so the idea is if I block the taste, I will take one M&M and I'll taste it, and it's like, eh, it tastes
yeah,
like cardboard or something. Or
yeah. Do you like cardboard?
yeah,
Yeah,
you mentioned going to a birthday party and
yeah,
blocking the sugar receptors before the birthday party, short term
exactly.
now, not forever, not for the rest of your
Yeah,
life, but something short
yeah,
term.
yeah,
Then the I have a bite of that ice cream or the cake, and it tastes like cardboard, and I'm not. I don't have the impulse to eat the whole thing,
yeah.
and also um, focusing on that, and then we'll come back to the gut effects. But so this
Hmm.
is possible, right? That it's
Yeah,
possible to block it now, short term, reversibly, right? So it's
yeah.
this isn't for life. That I'm not going to
No, no,
taste
but
anything sweet
that's
anymore,
a
right?
good point. That's a good point. So an interesting thing, and everyone had that experience, I think, where, for example, my dad wanted to cut out the sugar that he normally puts into his espresso, in his double espresso, or the artificial sweetener. And at the beginning, that's a very hard thing to do. Like the coffee is bitter, it's not that taste that you normally have. But if you got it out and you maintain that for 2 weeks or something, it's not difficult to maintain. Like everything, if you would put it back, it would be, wow, that's too sweet. And so you will live your life without putting sugar in coffee, for example. And that could have to do with that your taste buds literally reform every 10 to 14 days. So you can change the palate basically. So that would make sense that if you would do this for 2 weeks, like cut out sugar, that if you would start introducing it again, that you're not putting that much sugar in it because it doesn't taste well. It doesn't taste good. It's just too sweet, right? So you kind of like reset your taste. And obviously the food industry is doing everything to make that combination, that hyper palatable combination between sugar, oils, etc., and fat. And what we want to do with our approach is, go forward with a more whole food natural diet where you don't have that super high sweetness effect that you get from high fructose corn syrup, for example. Like the fructose component in sugar is the thing that makes sugar basically sweet. Fructose is super sweet. It's compared to glucose five times as sweet or something. But in whole foods, like in an apple, you won't find 55% of fructose. It's like 5% or something. So, of course, Coca-Cola puts like high fructose corn syrup in Coke because it's ultimately sweet. It's like you crave it. It's so good. It's a straight dopamine hit. If you would if you would get a Coca-Cola with no soup before it, if you would rinse it in your mouth and you block your sweet taste receptor, it basically, it's just like nasty water. It's like phosphoric acid. All of the tastes that you normally don't get from a Coke because it's so sweet are now there. So it's just not attractive. So you're kind of like learning your brain to be not interested in those highly ultra processed things like a Coca-Cola or flavored yogurt or whatever.
And so to be clear, this technology blocks not only glucose but fructose, both overall
Yeah.
sweetness of
Yeah.
any sugar, presumably,
Yeah.
right?
So we block the TES1R2 receptor, which is the sweet taste receptor, which is activated by everything that is sweet. And it works with a plant compound called gymnemic acid, which could be found in Gymnema, which is found in Gymnema sylvester. We combine it with some others, and it's temporarily blocking that sweet taste receptor because the structure mimics normal sugar, so it's blocking it. Afterwards, if you would then take something sweet, you cannot taste it. So that's the effect. And the cool thing is, I think that it works for everyone. Like 100% of the people would experience this effect. So it's a very funny way also at a family dinner, to hand it out and to say like, oh, no, you can try that, dessert that you would normally get. Um, and it would taste like nothing. I bet you cannot finish it because it's just not nice. And the other taste though would still be there. So if you would get like an almond, just of not something fatty, for example, you can still have the same sensation with that almond. And that's really fascinating, I think. So it could really help you to go to like keto or low carb, to skip sugar and to maintain that.
Yeah, and so that's the perceptual impact, blocking the sensation, the perceived sweetness that triggers the
Mhm.
dopamine hit and everything else. Now you talked about there's a secondary effect, like even if I manage to swallow that handful of M&Ms and it goes on down into my GI
Don't
tract,
do it, bro.
then you're saying there's something else going on there in the gut,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
what's happening there with this
Yeah.
new
So
technology?
recent research found that these same sweet taste receptors, so the TES1 or 2 and 3, are also present in your gut and intestine. And they function as glucose sensors there. So they detect sugar, so the sugar can bind there. And there are different theories on how it works, like how it blocks the absorption of sugar in the small intestine. One theory is that it would inhibit sodium-dependent glucose transporters and that it therefore would lower your post-meal glucose spike and also your insulin response. But there are different theories, but it's well studied. And it's also something that I have studied myself by wearing a CGM, doing some experiments, trying like a half a liter of orange juice in the morning on an empty stomach without blocking my sweet taste receptor. And as you know, the effect is enormous. It's just like a Coca-Cola because there's so much sugar compressed in that orange juice. And the next day I was trying to do the same thing, but I was blocking my sweet taste receptors. And the spike was less, like 30% less. And also then the insulin response after. And one fascinating study was done by a Monell Institute in the US. Maybe we can also link in the description later on. And I've written it down because I think it's just so it's just so important that it says current day dietary habits of excessive ingestion of sucrose and high fructose corn syrup could hyperstimulate the sweet taste receptor and contribute to metabolic syndrome and prediabetes. And what's even more frustrating or interesting, I don't know, is that the co-author of that study now works for Coca-Cola as head of innovation. So I'm not sure if they're going to do, but of course, Coca-Cola is full of high fructose corn syrup. And they're basically in this study, it's shown that it could contribute to metabolic syndrome by just hyperstimulating the sweet taste receptor. And that's just bizarre in my opinion, but it could explain a lot of things. Also that non-caloric sweeteners like sucralose might also not be a good thing for your health, in the long term, because still only by the sweet taste your pancreas starts to produce insulin. It's called a cephalic insulin response. Even though you would spit it out, you don't even get it inside your body just by tasting the sweetness, you know. So maybe we're just like all consuming way too much of sugary stuff.
Yeah. Well, and since you brought it up, does this also block it blocks natural sugars, all the ones we talked about. How about the artificial sweeteners of
Same.
various kinds?
Yeah, same thing because
Is
it stimulates the sweet taste receptor, which is sweet. So everything that tastes sweet, it blocks. So all of the like 300 different names that we just named for sugar, but also non-caloric sweeteners. And in this study, more specifically, the study from Monell, they did a pretty interesting thing. Like they gave people something that would inhibit their sweet taste receptor and something that would hyperstimulate it, like sucralose. And both groups had something sweet with glucose afterwards. And what they saw is that the glucose response and insulin response was different in both groups. So the group where the sweet taste receptor was stimulated with sucralose, they had a higher glucose response and higher insulin response because of the glucose meal. And in the group where it was inhibited, it was lower, and also the insulin response was lower. So that's a really fascinating thing to me. So I think for overall health, like dampening or inhibiting your sweet taste receptor could be also a really interesting thing for pharmaceutical companies to have better metabolic health, even though you would maintain the same lifestyle with sugar. I would always say like don't go for it anyhow. So that's why I love the behavioral component. But even though if you would take it, there's benefit in inhibiting that sweet taste receptor in your gut and in intestine.
Yeah, and talking about gut effects on sugar and absorption and metabolic effects. Obviously, the the peptides, the GLP-1 agonists, the Ozempic, Mounjaro, semaglutide, tirzepatide, all those things.
Yeah.
How is it? It's obviously a different molecule, different
Yeah.
mechanism. Can you contrast those a little bit to
Yeah.
the gut effects here of this one?
Yeah, so I think in parallel you would see even better effects. Indeed, like GLP-1s were completely different with appetite, and it's a very interesting approach. Although I'm a bit critical about it because the behavior component is less, and of course, like children obesity and it's a very sensitive discussion, but you already see it in the US, like, should we get a child Ozempic, yes or no? I think that's a really dangerous route to go, but for pharma, it would be something that they possibly applaud because if you go off these drugs, you will gain back a lot of weight because you lost also a lot of muscle. So I'm not the biggest fan, but for some people that literally tried a lot of things in life already and it didn't work, yes, of course, it could have like really great effects. And but I think as a preventative measure, so if everything is still relatively okay and you're in a good, you can still make lifestyle changes quite easily. I think this approach would be great because it helps you to maintain that healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, and to be clear, this compound we're talking about now, you founded a company and you're CEO of a company that makes this, makes it available. And in full disclosure, I'm an advisor for the company, but I only advise companies whose products I trust and believe in, would use myself and for my family. So I'm super excited about this product. So now if so we can either block the sugar taste in the mouth, or we can block it in the gut, or do both. What's the best practices? How do people use
Yeah.
this? It's a
Yeah, so
tablet,
it's
right? Yeah.
very, yeah, so it differs per individual, like what your lifestyle is. I would say if you are living, for example, a ketogenic lifestyle or low carb, there's little benefit because you don't get the negative effects of sugar because you don't get it in anyhow, right? But if you do take a lot of carbs, which is later, raising your blood sugar, then it would have like a great effect. If you would take it as a capsule and block your GI tract, these sweet taste receptors, and lower your glucose spike and insulin response. If you have this sweet tooth, and you want something sweet after dinner, or just like throughout the day, you want these snacks, you want a Snicker, a Mars, or a milkshake, then to try it out for a month or so and have that block effect in your mouth would have a really strong, powerful behavioral effect. And you don't get that dopamine hit, so it's not that attractive. And you should compare it to like cocaine, like some several drugs. If you don't get the dopamine hit from cocaine, like people wouldn't be as addictive to it, obviously, right? And I'm not comparing one-to-one sugar to cocaine, or some experts are doing it because it activates the reward system. Um, yeah, it would make sense to if you have these sweet cravings to use it that way. So you can use it different ways depending on your lifestyle.
Yeah, so that's great. It gives me a lot of flexibility. So if I'm eating a healthy lifestyle, low carb, and maybe I'm going to uh, go out to dinner, I'm going to be tempted by the bread or by this pasta or something, then I would take one of these no-su capsules. What's the time course of the effect on the gut? Is it just with the
Yes.
meal and then that will do
Yeah,
it?
so in all of the studies, it's like half an hour before the meal in sugar or in carbs to have that blockage effect on your blood sugar level. Yeah.
And then if I want to do even one level higher and actually kill the joy of having the thing to taste,
Yeah.
then I gargle in it, right? Or sort of rinse my mouth out, and that will
Yeah, you
prevent
rinse your
me
mouth.
from
Yeah.
even eating it, right?
Yeah.
Likely, right?
Yeah, and we work with well-studied. I think that's another thing to say. Like those are plant molecules, plant compounds from, herbs that are really famous in Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine. So Gymnema sylvester, jujube. In a meta-analysis not that long ago, it was discovered that those two compounds, for example, block the sweet taste receptor. So we combined it. And that's what makes it so powerful and unique. But those are well-studied herbs that people already take for a long periods of time, and that indeed show to lower the blood sugar, insulin levels, and help in curbing, these sugar cravings.
Okay, yeah, so that's a good. We check that box. It's a natural compound. It's been around for thousands of years in Ayurvedic medicine, so it's not some new
No,
engineered thing that, may be good or bad, but a lot of
no, no,
questions.
no.
So there's
It's called the sugar destroyer in India, and it's pretty famous. Gymnema sylvester. It's called the sugar destroyer because it literally, destroys the taste of sugar.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and on I've heard you talk about the one of the goals of the company is helping people live longer, healthier, and happier. Why happiness?
I think that's a crucial element. Like, of course, we are here focusing on metabolic health, and lowering your blood sugar, insulin, be metabolically flexible, and all of these things. But of course, mental health is a super important aspect also. And I would say it gives you a lot of joy to, to be metabolically flexible also, and to not have those in the dip of a glucose. After a glucose spike, of course, you have this period where you want more and you feel a bit down, and your energy is constantly going up and down. And if you are more plateauing it, I would say you're also better enjoying life. And besides that aspect, I think everyone should just have fun in life and do the things that they love. And for me, that's like what we talked about surfing. For you, it's other stuff. And but to give, like, have some sort of control on your on this side, metabolic health, it gives me a lot of, power and pleasure also, and a
Yeah,
goal.
yeah, totally. I think we're in agreement there. And then live longer. We've talked about mTOR and rapamycin targets. So how does sweet taste receptors at all tie into longevity pathways? Is there science known on that?
Yeah, so of course, like, I know that mTOR is your favorite molecule, as I can put it that way. So there are some studies on gymnemic acid, so the sweet taste receptor blocker, and mTOR. And one of the things are that it could, if you lower your glucose spike and insulin response, you're more in the off mode of mTOR, you're inhibiting mTOR. That was the conclusion of the study, but of course, a lot of more research should focus on it. But overall, in terms of health span, eventually type 2 diabetes is something that a lot of us will get. The numbers are astronomical, and it's rising, and children are getting it. So lowering your blood sugar is one of the best things you can do, and being sensitive to insulin for a long period of time. Because indeed, like, the older we get, the chances are getting higher and higher, of us developing those conditions. So for me, it's just like prevention is an important thing. Like, diagnostics is one side, but also just taking care of your health before it's too late, or you're in an unfavorable position. It's never too late, I would argue, or almost never. But just, that will give you a lot of power, control, and I think that's an important aspect of it too.
Yeah, yeah. So what are you building next that should truly terrify big food? What are you working on?
Yeah, so now eventually, it's really easy to go in that mood of, big food is the enemy, and they put all of these chemicals inside, and they are not there for you to produce healthy food, because why would they? There's no reason for them, actually. They are never put, they're not in that position to do so. Um, and that, a lot of smart PhDers are working in laboratories there. Like, it's really easy to go on that route, but eventually you need to feed people. So I think you also have to come to, like, a system where the food industry is incentivized to produce healthy, metabolically healthy food for us. And it's a long way to go. I think there are some signals in the US that are pointing into the right direction now, but it's still baby steps, and there is still a long way to go. But I'm happy that metabolic health is gaining more attention, and also the food that we literally the food that we are getting inside of our body, that we should be more cautious about it, because all of these chronic conditions are growing exponentially.
So fast forward 10 years or pick your number, maybe longer. How does the world change when the metabolic health problem is actually solved? What the world's going to look like?
Phew, that's a really good question. I just know that I will be surfing, and I hope with a lot of old people in the water because everyone is living a long and healthy life. But if, yeah, it's difficult to answer. I just hope that the food industry realizes that they have to take control and that they have to play a role in this also, and produce food that is healthy for people. And I respect a lot of people, doctors in the US, that are pointing this out and are not afraid to mention this, and also, the role of the food industry and big pharma. Just, it's a noble goal to say, we should all live long and healthy, right? And of course, there's always a genetic component, something that we talked at the beginning about, but it turns out that for Alzheimer's and for cancer, that genetic component is only 5 to 10%. So 90 to 95% is environmental. And we can do a lot about that. Not we as an individual always, of course, with food, but also microplastics, air pollution. There are a lot of things, and it's multifactorial, right? So I hope that we start to focus and shift our attention together to that 90 to 95% of the environment.
Well, thanks so much, Sander. This has been a fascinating conversation. Maybe tell people how they can follow you and mention NOSU, the website. We'll put the links in the show notes as well,
Great.
along with a discount code. But maybe just mention it now for people who are listening to this podcast.
Yeah, yeah. So nosuhealth.com, that's the website. You will see here the product very shortly. It's no sugar for the people who didn't get it. And my personal account is Sander Julian Brus on LinkedIn, and Brusley which is sort of my nickname from back in the days. It's on Instagram, for the people that want to follow me.
Great. Well, thanks so much for the great work you're doing. An exciting product that hopefully will help many people live better, healthier lives. So thanks again for this conversation.
It was a sweet conversation, Rob. Thank you.
If you're enjoying this program, please hit that subscribe button, or even better, leave a review. Your support makes it possible for us to create the quality programming that we're continually striving for. Half of all heart attacks strike without warning. Your best early warning? A CT calcium scan. We've made it even better by adding arterial age and liver fat quantification, all from the same scan. Now available nationwide without a doctor's prescription. Use the code LUFKIN20 for 20% off. This episode is brought to you by L Nutra, maker of the Prolong fasting mimicking diet. Use the link in the show notes for 20% off.
One of the most common questions I get asked are which blood tests I check for myself on a regular basis. Well, I check up to 50 biomarkers, but the secret is that I'm able to do everything from the convenience of my home, and I collect a sample with this new breakthrough device. So no more trays full of tubes of blood, needles, or even finger sticks. And you don't need to be a doctor to do it. Then I just mail it in for the results. Cyfox Health makes it possible. Use the link below to get 20% off.
Can I start? Is it recording?
It's already recording.
Oh, sorry. This is for general information and educational purposes only, and it's not intended to constitute or substitute for medical advice or counseling, the practice of medicine, or the provision of healthcare, diagnosis, or treatment, or the creation of a physician-patient or clinical relationship. The use of this information is at their own user's risk. If you find this to be on the value, please hit that like button to subscribe to support the work that we do on this channel. And we take your suggestions and advice very seriously, so please let us know what you'd like to see on this channel. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time. You should say that.
No, good. It's for you to say it. I think that's very good. Do you like it? You want to do it one more time, or is that good? I think that was good.
Yes.
All right.
You need to save the recording.